Hi, I'm Corey Butler.
And I'm Sean Todd. And this is the Mind and Money Show, powered by Acivda Financial.
On our show, we'll be going into a deep dive into the relationship we have with our minds, health, and our money.
If you'd like to join us on our journey towards becoming better humans, stick around.
Today with us, we want to welcome Kelley Keehn to our show. Kelley is a very well-known financial advocate who is an author of a variety of books, TV personality, and well-known financial contributor on a variety of topics known to many. Often heard and seen on the Marilyn Dennis Show, a weekly contributor to the Globe and Mail, CNBC, CBC Radio. Kelley is the advocate for the Financial Planning Canada, and today we welcome her to discuss her new book, Talk Money to Me, a great read on exposing some pitfalls many Canadians make in their financial decisions. This topic is more relevant today than ever. Thank you for coming on the show, Kelley.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, Kelley, I really enjoyed the book. I spent some time going through it, and it really resonated. I found it extremely interesting, and a lot of it because I also experienced a separated family growing up and some of the pains that came with that, with watching both parents struggling to pay their bills and to get by. And of course, seeing things I probably didn't want to experience again or pass along to my own kids. So I kind of want to delve in there a little bit and talk a little bit before we start too much is just what kind of experience was that like for you? That was obviously very emotional and probably had a great impact on you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm always pretty transparent with my message because it's just such a taboo to talk about money. It's okay to talk about when you have money, should you go into an RSP or a TFSA or something of that sort. But when you don't have it, it's really tough. And as you mentioned in the intro, thank you for that, gentleman, that I'm the consumer advocate for FP Canada. So they really care about what's on the hearts and minds of Canadians. They set the standards for certified financial planners and financial planning professionals. And they came out with a survey recently on money taboos and actually just taboos. And money, obviously, as you can appreciate, was the number one taboo over religion, politics, talking about sex. And at the back of the book, it says, why do we know more about our friends, what's going on in their bedrooms than we do their bank accounts, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So, right? Yeah, and you gentlemen know you're dealing with clients every day. You know that maybe you're probably the only people that they can really be honest with, and even that can be difficult sitting across from a professional. I'm not in the financial industry anymore. I was, but I remember those really tough conversations. Sometimes you're more of a psychologist than you are a planner. So back to my story, I just felt it really important that I've always shared that I grew up a single mom raising 3 kids. And if your listeners can imagine Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That pyramid where, Maslow was an American psychologist and felt that as you ascended up in wealth, really, not having to pay for basic things like putting a roof over your head and keeping the lights on and feeding yourself and your family, you would have a better life. You would move up the pyramid. So I promise I'll wrap this up in a second. We were raised right at the bottom of the pyramid. But what's very interesting, my mom was a waitress trying to raise 3 kids on her own. But what was very interesting was I had a lot of very wealthy uncles. I had a number of very, very wealthy uncles. So it really messed me up about money, as you can appreciate. I'd see them. They were confident. They talked about stocks and bonds. They had good self-esteem. They negotiated. And then I would come home to my mom or my other uncles and aunts that didn't have money, and I saw this disparity. So it's very different when you don't have money.
Obviously, I see a lot of this, and I'm sure you do as well, but how much do you feel divorces and separation cause a lot of our people and a lot of our listeners and our clients to end up in this period of suffering? Not unnecessarily. Obviously, things happen, but it clearly does take a big impact on them, and it may cause a big fallout financially for them for 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, such a great point. And I don't think it matters if you are and this may be controversial to say, but it hits both sides, right? If you're the woman looking after the kids, or, I mean, my brother took his two daughters and fought very hard for his divorce and raised his kids on his own. So there's no hard and fast rules anymore of who takes the kids, but 100% of the time, it's devastating for both parties. Absolutely. You built this life together. You've commingled these assets. Now you have to unravel that and then now survive on your own. If you're surviving on your own and you're a solo, you're single, you have a smaller place. You have smaller things. You probably aren't, a member of a club and all those types of things that you build when you get married and have kids. And then when you separate that, absolutely, I think you both can attest to that even more, seeing clients and working with them, how devastating that is emotionally, mentally, physically, but certainly financially.
And I don't think that people really factor that in when they say, you know what, I'm sick of my spouse and I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I'm out. I don't think very many actually consider the profound, devastating impact to their personal balance sheet.
100%. And I think that on the flip side, I worry about a lot of millennials that are kind of so casually and flippantly moving in together, buying a property together. They're like, we're not getting married. We're not that serious, but they don't realize that they have now formed this legal agreement unbeknownst to them if they live together for, a number of months or years, depending on the province that you're in. And that one person could actually be now a dependent on them for many years to come because of that situation of living together. And I just don't think that people grasp anymore that just because you haven't gone through the formality of marriage, that there could still be a significant impact to your bottom line based on the choices that you make, such as moving in with someone, cohabitating, all that type of stuff.
Of course. And on top of all this flippant attitude right now, we're going through and experiencing a crisis that we've never, ever experienced before. And I kind of go back to some of the points you made in your book that 1 in 5 don't even feel they need an emergency fund. And 4 in 10 don't feel that they have their finances under control. So how does this translate to the current status for many, many families and people today?
Oh, you make such a great point. Yeah. I mean, on the other side of COVID-19, people were teetering on their financial stability, either just not having that cushion, not really understanding, what they had. Now, today on the other side, I'm hearing from people across the country, and I know you're hearing from a lot of panicked people as well, probably not your clients because they're solid, but we didn't save for this. A lot of people didn't have their debt in order. And what I mean by that is, right, having high interest rate credit card debt, having to put pressure on the banks and the government to get them to lower that debt, people cashing in their RSPs for emergencies right now, not understanding that you lose that room forever. You're not going to get the $1,000 in your hand that you took out because of withholding tax, and you may pay more, and you might be crystallizing that at a loss. So it's so important, the kind of work that you both do and the importance of sitting down with a professional financial planner at key points in your life, because I don't know how else you get your life in order unless you do that, right? We would never self-diagnose, but we want these sound bites when it comes to our finances. But, you wouldn't take the same prescription as your neighbor because that's easy, right? You go to a doctor, you have them do a diagnosis, you figure out where your blind spots are, and then you try your best to plan to, mitigate those weaknesses in your life. But unfortunately, Canadians are still self-diagnosing. They're not reaching out for help. And I think that COVID-19 has been a real wake-up call that we as a nation and many individuals just weren't prepared. And I think, and there's no finger wagging here. Like, it's not like, oh, you should have had an emergency account and you didn't. This took everyone by surprise. It's no one's fault, but I think a lot of people, when we see the other side of this, are going to be like, never again. They're going to get their financial house in order, and they're not going to spend 1 red cent until they do. That's how I feel a lot of people are going to come out on the other side.
How much do you think, Kelley, this keeping up with the Joneses attitude has put us in this kind of position. I think there's a lot, if I look back, there's been a lot of this going on in the past where, and you make some good points in your book about most people don't realize, how poor of a job their own neighbors have done at running their financial show. I mean, we look at them and think, wow, they're doing great. They've got a Jag in the driveway and a big house, but there's a good chance they owe a lot more than they have. And because of those attitudes and those sentiments, has that not kind of driven us into a really bad spot right now? And especially what we're going through again.
Yeah, 100%. And more than anyone, that's why I think it's so important people have a financial pro, because you can help people really understand that you cannot look at someone and compare yourself financially, that it is impossible to know if they had an inheritance, if they're swimming in debt. Like, it's absolutely impossible to know. And it's important for people to realize that for all of millennia, as long as you feel we've been on this planet, if you were poor, you looked poor. And if you were wealthy, everyone in your town knew you were wealthy. But with the advent of credit the last few decades, and cheap credit at that, if you're looking at a line of credit, you can look incredibly rich and be swimming in debt. And certainly something I was lucky very early on in my career to work at a bank and see the balance sheet, see the net worth statements of, the quote unquote seemingly wealthy, the person in my community that looked like they were incredibly wealthy. And then you would see their balance sheet and they were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in debt. And it was a real wake up call. Now, it didn't cure me for making my own mistakes of keeping up with the Joneses and early in my career, overspending, trying to look super successful to please my clients. I've atoned and remedied my ways, but it's really hard. There's actually a University of Alberta professor and an Israeli professor that wanted to quantify the keeping up with the Joneses effect. And they looked at lottery winners and they wanted to know, would it affect you if your neighbor won the lottery? A very interesting question. And what they found was, yes, indeed it would. Now, the good news is that very unlikely your neighbor is going to win the lottery. But if they do, your chance of going bankrupt actually increases 2.4% for every single $1,000 they win in the lottery. And you go, how is that possible? What is going on there? And if you'll just grant me the liberty of just going on with this example for a minute more, there was this Italian researcher, Dr. Rizzolotti, and he was doing some brain experiments with monkeys. And one of the researchers came back with an ice cream cone while they were doing this experiment with the monkeys, and the monkeys' brains lit up watching the scientists licking the ice cream cone as if they were experiencing the pleasure themselves. And they dubbed this a mirror neuron, something in our brain. Yeah, when we see someone score a goal in hockey or hit that perfect shot in golf, or if you want that Jag and your neighbor got it, or you wanted that trip and your neighbor got it, there's something in our brain that wants it too. That's why a lot of people watch these silly unboxing videos on YouTube. Like, people take pleasure in watching other people open boxes. I don't really get it, but so the long and the short of it is that our brains are actually hardwired to want what our friends and neighbors have and for instant gratification.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Right, Corey? I'm pretty sure it's relatable when we go golfing. You want what the other guy has in his bag.
Well, why do you think Instagram has done what it's done, right? Like, that's exactly it. It's all about what everybody else has. It's 100%.
This facade, right? It's so true. And that's a really neat anecdote that you just told us, Kelley. I just wrote it down. 2.4% per $1,000 the neighbors win in lottery. Incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
incredible.
And you mentioned Instagram. I mean, it used to be before social media that you would just compare yourself to the people in your community, right? Maybe you went to church or work or what have you, or synagogue or golf, and that was kind of who you compared yourself to. Now with social media, you're comparing yourself to celebrities and to everyone on there and the super wealthy. And like, never before have we glimpsed in at the everyday lives of people that are not within our circle. And so now we're comparing to a very different level than maybe we would have been comparing to before.
with no tolerance for any margin of error. I noticed that, I've got two daughters and adult daughters, and they're on there all the time. But what I can see is that there is no room for error. It's the perfect picture goes on the internet, not the 9 other ones that don't look flattering or don't show the lifestyle that you want to show. So I think what we're always seeing is this perfect image from every single person that we're connected to on our social feeds.
Yeah, and you say 9, it's probably more like 19 or 29 that they, you see that perfect, exactly that little spot in their home. Or I'm on the road a lot, or I used to be before COVID, and I would dine by myself a great deal in restaurants and see a couple maybe arguing the whole time. And then all of a sudden they stop and take the perfect picture of their meal and go back to arguing again. So yeah, we're not getting a snapshot of people's real lives, right?
Hashtag, we had a great time. Yeah.
I love her.
Exactly.
That's so true. So what advice, as I go through here, and clearly there's some great tips in your book, but as I go through there is some great strategies that I think you've imparted for someone in that situation when they've gone down their left road instead of the right. They've paid too much. They've bought too much. They've overspent. And now they want to atone, as you mentioned. How would you recommend somebody start doing that?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And I think I would liken it to parallel to if you wanted to get in good physical shape, right? There's going to be a few things that you've got to do. There's 3. In fact, you've got to weigh in, like it or not, you've got to get on a scale. And if this were January 1st or January 2nd, we were talking about our health, that's what you would have to do. And it's important that Canadians weigh in with their financial health. Like, where do you sit? What debt do you have? What's the interest rates on those debts? Do you have investments? If you do, what fees are you paying? Do you have insurance? How much do you have? What do you have at work? So weighing in first is so important to know where you stand. Then number 2, if you were going to get into better physical health, yes, it's important to work out, but we know that it's more important the calories that you're putting into your body. So it's the same thing with our financial life. Where are your financial calories going? And in the book, as you know, I've got a 30-day anti-budget. It's a challenge to track where your money is going. And actually, one of my readers was very wealthy. He didn't need to track his money at all, but he did. And what he found was he had a $3,200 Diet Coke habit. And he couldn't believe it. Yeah, like insane. I mean, that's all he drank. No coffee, no nothing. And when he added it up, he was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go and get a $200 soda stream. And his life and his health is better for it. So it's, figuring out where your money's going. You times it by 12. And that can be a real eye-opener. There's, again, no finger wagging. You can have your coffee. You can have your fancy car, whatever it is you want. But are you aware that that's where your money is going? And then third is, again, if you were trying to get into better health, you might reach out to a personal trainer, a nutritionist. You'd reach out for some help. And it's really, really important that Canadians get pros on their side, like you guys, a CFP. As you know, there's also a QAFP, the Qualified Associate Financial Planner, for those that maybe don't have complex cases yet. They haven't amassed a lot of money, but they've got tough questions. Should they pay down the mortgage? Should they, take out an RSP? These are important questions. So I think it's really important that you assemble that team while you are figuring out where you sit and where you can trim the fat.
And how do you think, Kelley, that we get people to pivot, to actually realize they need to stand on the scale, per se? That is the $1 million question, right? Until someone is feeling pain financially, or they have like some sort of windfall or inheritance or something significant, how do we get them to pivot early, right? You like you just talked about, people with debt. Well, why is it that there's more Dodge Ram trucks and F-150 trucks on the road than ever before? Well, my analysis is because we live in a society of cash flow now, monthly cash flow. And now we're financing freaking vehicles for 8 years, 9 years. And we're going to see 10-year car loans pretty soon. And it's just like, and people aren't paying attention. Sean has had people come in that were buying something and making a monthly payment. And they didn't even realize that they were paying double for that at the end of the day, but it was all about cash flow. And it doesn't even seem to matter demographic. It's not like, well, it's those millennials. No, I see it again and again and again. And I don't know what it is that will, somebody will say, well, I'm putting money in my RSP at the bank. What's it in? I don't know. I have an RSP. They don't even know what's in it. They don't even know that there's managed product. They don't know if there's stocks. They don't know if it's GICs. They don't know if it's cash. And it's almost like they don't care. And I don't know, I'm super excited to be able to, connect with somebody like yourself that is pushing literacy and education out there. But it's a daily struggle for us advisors.
Yeah, and I hear your frustration. I really do. And I think part of it is that we do live in a society of overwhelm. We just have so much coming at us that we don't know what one thing to do, which then we do nothing. And then second of all, we know that the number one rule of economics is incentives drive the market. And we have been incentivized for a very long time to drive the market through low interest rates and consumer spending. That's great for politicians. It's great for the economy. We all feel richer. But at the end of the day, if we've done nothing but accumulate debt, there's a point where there's a pain point. And I think, especially with COVID-19, we're seeing that. Like, if we were having this conversation in the 1980s when interest rates were in the double digits, if there was Instagram back then, I think people would be Instagramming their bank account. They'd be like, hey, look at me saving all this money. Like, there would not be any kind of this garbage of I'm like walking on a personal jet and all that. You just couldn't do that. You didn't, I don't even know if there were lines of credit in the 1980s. You didn't take money to go on a vacation. You didn't take debt to like renovate your kitchen. You just didn't do it. I was actually the host of a show years ago for the W Network called Burn My Mortgage. And I'm embarrassed that at the time, I didn't even know what a mortgage burning party was. It was like, what is that? Like, people used to have mortgage burning parties.
Right.
Because like, if you could even get one, it was in the double digits. So part of the problem is we are incentivized, like you said, with the Dodge Rams. You go into a car dealership and it's like, hey, what can you afford per month? No one's sitting down with them and calculating what the actual cost is and helping them understand and realize that. It's like, hey, it's just a few dollars a day. That's why, again, it is so important to sit down with a financial professional like you folks, because as you know, one of the chapters in the book is the car trap. And, they leave the lot with just about spending $100,000. Yeah. That is a major decision without any financial support behind you.
Yeah. And there's no savings mentality anymore. I find that, for the most part, you start talking about savings and people just glaze over because it is such an instant credit world, and if you go back, listening to my parents talk, when they started off when they were young, you would save up enough to live in a small little bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, and you'd save up money over 4 or 5 years until you could afford to potentially move into a townhome or a semi. And you stay there for 5 or 10 years, you save up enough to buy a single home on a bigger property. And that's just not happening. People are coming out of university and earning $75,000 and buying a $500,000 place with absolutely no money down and that big $75,000 Dodge Ram. It's wild.
Yeah, 100%. And they just, I mean, until either the conversation changes, and I mean, we're doing that right now with your great show, having these conversations, showing people like, look, I think part of it too is people don't want to crunch the numbers. They make these weird excuses like, I'm just not good at math. Things are good right now. But it's like, when you see that just a few dollars more a day, paying down on your debt or putting it into savings or what have you, I personally think it gets really addictive. I think it gets very exciting. And I think a lot of people are in apathy. They're just kind of going through the motions, doing what their friends are doing. Once they get a mortgage, they just throw it in a desk, a desk drawer. They never dust it off to say, hey, what if I fast track paying my mortgage? What would that mean? How much would I save? It's just like, it's like finances is an event. Like, it's kind of like with your health. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to eat that stupid salad and I never want to look at it again. I'm going to go to the gym once and that's it. That's it. Like, God forbid, I had to look at it every day. And unfortunately, until we change the conversation and realize that your health, that your wealth, that your finances are not an event to get through, that they're a process just like your health, it's never going to change for people.
And how much do you think those are linked? If we look at your internal happiness and your actual health in general, how much do you think that is linked to your financial successes and to just not being in debt all the time? Like, do you see a correlation there?
Yeah, there's like this low-lying anxiety that people have about their finance. Again, FP Canada did a number of surveys on how stressed people are about their finances. And, people are losing sleep at night. Dr. Moira Summers, who's a wonderful neuropsychologist out of Winnipeg, she talks about, the cognitive bandwidth tax that happens when you're stressed about your finances, that it actually, temporarily reduces your IQ. So just when you need to be thinking clearly as a student or a worker because you're financially stressed, that's when your IQ is being taxed. Now, what are the physical ramifications of that? I don't know if there's been specific surveys. I'm sure CAMH and a bunch of great organizations have done some work on that. But anecdotally, we know that it affects your health. It affects your mental well-being. It affects everything. Yet, I think it's because it's still such a taboo. And as awful as COVID-19 is, because so many people were in financial trouble, I hope that on the other side of this, we're more open to have the conversation because, back in the 1960s, 1970s, it used to be very shameful to talk about cancer. It used to be very shameful to talk about a disease. We used to whisper the word cancer. Now today, we run for the cure. We have Facebook support groups for mental health, for physical health. But yet, when it comes to money, it's just something we just still, it's like, oh no, we don't talk about that, So until we change that, it's not going to change for people.
And then just like your example where you said that, the monkeys salivate with the ice cream, would this not mean that if we actually started showing really positive money management and we're having success by not using an exorbitant amount of debt, that we could actually be enticing our neighbors and our peers and our colleagues to be doing the same because they might get excited about the same things that we're getting excited about?
100%. Like you guys remember participation and Hal and Joanne, right? Like, or when you vote, you get this little sticker. What if you made your RSP contribution? You got a little badge for it. And then you actually know what's in your RSP and you got like a little incentive for that. And automatically when you turned 18, the government just opened up a TFSA account for you, even if there was no money in it. It's like kind of, there's a box ticked. Like, we need to do more work as well to reward Canadians, just as you said, when they positively do something for their financial well-being, but also set some defaults that makes it really easy. Because, sometimes something like savings, like, okay, let's put that on my to-do list, but then you break it down and there's probably 10 things before a person takes any action. Do you open up a savings account? Is it a TFSA? Is it an RSP? They don't understand what those things mean. They break down, they go, forget it. And then they go watch something on Netflix. So I just think we have to, like Dr. Oz, you turn on Dr. Oz and what's that?
They watch Lion King on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Like you turn on Dr. Oz and he says, hey, do this one thing. Go buy some black olives today. Here's what black olives do for you. Go get some black olives. And you're like, okay, I can do that. Like, we need some kind of direction where it's like, go and do these one or two things at this time, make it really simple for people. Once they get a few wins, they get that self-efficacy under their belt, then I think it produces some positive forward momentum. But how do we interrupt what they're doing right now? That's tough. I think it's stuff like what you guys are doing right here, and just trying to be champions to get people to pay attention to their finances.
That's great. And did I cut you off, Corey? Did you ask a question? Do you want to ask a question on that?
No. I just great conversation as we move along here, and I was just making me kind of think about the whole diet mentality, stepping on the scale again. I think it's like probably the best analogy that we have out there. And then it becomes like our industry, in my opinion, has done a really, shitty job of educating people. Like people don't even really know what a dividend is. People don't really know what an ETF is. They don't really understand how a stock works and why they should own it, or what does a bond do. And we have done a really terrible job of just educating people on compounding interest, whether it's good or bad. So it just, and I find as we move along down this path, it's, how to get that 10-minute attention span to take in, some info. And I think some of the challenges in our industry in its totality is that we throw too much at people and they just can't absorb it. And it's trying to, utilize tools like you're suggesting, Kelley, to get us there. And it's, but I do find, even we go through a discovery with our clients, and which we have to figure out, where they're standing, what's going on, how much debt, income, assets do they have. And it's incredible, regardless, again, of demographic, how challenging it is to get somebody to dedicate that time. Yet they'll turn around and they'll drive down the street and want to buy a second piece of property or a condo in about an hour. And it's astounding to me as to what goes on in our industry.
Yeah, you make a couple of great points there. And a couple of things I would add to that is, like, for example, let's say you were just going to take up the game of golf, or you were a new Canadian, and of course, we love watching hockey. Wouldn't it be a lot more fun to know a little bit about how those games worked? Like, golf has 18 rounds and a bogey's a bad thing. Hockey has 3 periods and a hat trick is a great thing. Like, just even knowing some of those basics is going to make it so much more fun. But as you alluded to as well, we make it so complex. Like, when I think about, I was just thinking about my health the other day, and I was like, well, what should be my BMI for my age, and what is actually, I wear a Fitbit, and I was just kind of Googling the other day. I haven't been working out as much, staying at home with COVID and self-isolating. And I was like, my heart rate keeps going up because I'm not exercising as much. I'm like, what is a safe heart rate for somebody my age? And we don't have any of these rules of thumb. Now, I know we don't want them when it comes to our finances because it is so individual to a person's situation. But I think also because we have no guidelines, we don't have like Canada's food guide. This is kind of what you should eat, or this is kind of what you should be weighing at your height and your age. We have nothing like that in the financial industry. So I think that too also can confuse a lot of people. And as you just said, the more complex it is, the more apathy kicks in and people just go, forget it. Their neighbor said that real estate is a really good investment. I can touch that. I can see that. I can understand that. Let's just do that. They don't have any comprehension of the risk associated with that. And they don't even weigh their options. So it's a big challenge that we all have ahead of us to help Canadians pay attention.
Sure. And they don't even pay attention to the things like you mentioned here in your book. You mentioned about raising a child, and it's $258,000 per child is an average cost. And I don't even know if most people have even fathomed that. Going back to a conversation we had at the start of this show, was those 2 millennials that are getting together thinking, well, we'll live together. Maybe we'll have a kid together. And they haven't even decided on a savings plan, a strategy, long-term goals, and no idea of the implications a child might have on their long-term savings, on themselves. Will they be able to have enough to fund this child? Can they even help this child obtain their own goals in a good way? I think it's just overlooked in so many ways.
Yeah. And again, when it comes to our health, it's easier to see, right? So it's like, well, I've got a plan. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want my heart rate to drop this many beats. So I'm going to, have this menu. I'm going to go to the gym this much. It's like, again, we didn't used to have these conversations. We used to just not talk about health. People smoked constantly. Whatever your doctor gave you for a prescription, you just took it and you ran. And now we would never do that. Like when my mom goes to the doctor, there's like several of us researching everything and what prescription she's taking. And we have a plan for everything. But yet you're right. When it comes to our health and I'm going to bring it back again to COVID and this financial devastation for so many people that are just like, even if you had a great job, if you had contracts signed, that might have disappeared in the blink of an eye or potentially did. And I think that it's going to be a real wake-up call for all of us to really understand that, do you want your government to have to support your very existence during such an awful time where people have life and death situations? Or do you want your future to be within your control, that even if there is a devastation, you can weather at least a good chunk of it before having to rely on a government bailout? It's an awful, awful place to be.
Terrible place. And that's a really solid point. Go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say, with COVID, it's incredible that this catalyst, is going to cause everybody to reevaluate where things are at, and without going into the doom and gloom of what's potentially in front of us, from an economic standpoint. This has to be the catalyst of the last 50, 60, 70 years that causes everybody to really consider, maybe I need to step on the scale. Like, this has to be it. There can't be something else that's going to happen in our lifetimes that is more profound than this. To think that, if the numbers are even remotely right and we're into a 1 in 5 is unemployed or depending on what happens here over the next couple of weeks, like, I have to believe that this is where we end up.
Yeah. And, I don't know about you guys, but, my husband has always done all the grocery shopping because, again, I'm on the road all the time, but stuck at home a few weeks ago when all this happened, I went into a grocery store, excuse me, and never in my life, ever, and I'm 45, have I ever gone anywhere and not been able to buy what I want when I want, other than if I was maybe traveling to a third world country. And I got to tell you, standing in that store with zero toilet paper, tissue, meat products, even the organic section, this was a couple of weeks ago when it was first hitting, even the organic section was decimated. I just stood there and thought about the advice of my grandma who lived through the Depression, how I never heeded it, to just be like, hey, there might be a time when you will appreciate the little that you have. And I think it's been a real wake-up call that in Canada, anyway, most of us, even people who are financially challenged, most people have a car, most people have a home, most people have a TV and Netflix and the internet. Most of us have a decent life compared to, let's say, our grandparents that lived through the Depression. And I think it's a real wake-up call that, wow, things can change very, very quickly. And so quickly that none of us could have ever imagined. And it just makes me want people to just say, never again will I be without a very, very robust emergency account. Never again will I have debts that I can't afford, that and hey, I've made every mistake in the book, and that from reading the book. I've made lots of mistakes in my life. So if like COVID would have hit me a long time ago in my career, I might have really suffered through it. And I'm just lucky that it hit me at a time when I could certainly weather it, but I know a lot of people can't. And I just hope that we'll all take the lessons of it on the other side to be so much stronger financially.
You both make really good points there. That's and you're right, Corey, more than ever, this should be the game changer. This should make people change their habits. And Kelley, clearly what's really important to you is taking that, making money and the ability to talk about it, not such a dirty topic, and that's clearly your point of your book. And I think some of what you've said today. So how happy would it make you if we could just push forward here down the road, instead of people just having book clubs or, people getting together to do beer tasting or wine tasting and wine and cheese nights with their neighbors? How happy would it make you if you knew that maybe 4 or 5 couples get together once a year to talk about some financial habits, the good habits that they have? This is what I've done to put myself in a better spot. Let's have a glass of wine and talk about it. Or would that make you happy looking backwards on that?
Oh my goodness. Actually, I'm tingling all over. Seriously, that is the most beautiful question anyone has ever asked me. And that would just make me, I don't even know if I do that with my own friends. That would make me so incredibly happy. What a beautiful thing. Actually, you guys should start that as a movement.
I'm going to make a hashtag. We'll do a hashtag. We'll do a wine, grab a bottle of wine, get 5 friends, come over to your place, have a nice dinner, and talk about some financial advocacy that you've done that doesn't include credit. That would be probably a great thing.
That is so beautiful. That is just so beautiful. I think that's what a gorgeous question. I think we get a more beautiful answer, right? I can't remember who said we get a more beautiful answer when we ask a more beautiful question. So well done. Yes, that's something to hope and strive for.
Well, wonderful. And certainly appreciate you taking the time, Kelley, to join us. Corey, is there anything else you have on your list of to-dos this afternoon?
No, I think that's, obviously this is great conversation, and it probably tells us that we might need to connect with Kelley at a later date, maybe around the other side of COVID, and maybe talk about some more positive things with managing money.
No, I would absolutely love that, Kelley. If we did that another time, that'd be great. Maybe we could talk about if we've made any gains with our neighbors in those wine nights. Would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think we can even start that. We can start our Zoom wine night. Why not start it sooner than later?
Yes,
I think that's wonderful.
Great idea. That's a great idea. Before you go, Kelley, I think Corey and I would love to ask if you could have one wish, would it be more time or more money?
More time.
Perfect. That's great. Well, certainly appreciate all of your insight. The book is great. I loved it, and
it's a very easy read. Yep.
I'm going to buy it for my kids to read as well. They're in university. I think they're going to be great people to take these great habits. I'm going to give it to some clients. And Kelley, for the people who want to connect with you, who haven't already done so, how would they connect with you, and where do they buy your book?
Yeah, thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a real honor to chat with you. I applaud the efforts of what you're doing to change Canadians, not just their literacy, but their well-being, to actually move the needle. So thank you for having me. They can find me pretty much if they just Google KelleyKeehn.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Of course, FP Canada, the organization I'm a consumer advocate for, they've got some great resources at financialplanningforcanadians.ca. And keep up your great work. I love what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Kelley.
Thank you so much, Kelley. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. To learn more about the topics we've spoken about, check out our blog page at explainthis.ca.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us in your favorite podcast app.
This is Sean Todd
and Corey Butler. Until next time.